I've worked in the same building for 30 years, and until last month, not one person in that glass and chrome palace ever bothered to learn my name. To them, I was just maintenance, the man in gray coveralls who appeared when the thermostat blinked or the toilet ran too long, a background noise with a keyring. It's funny, when people think of power, they picture corner offices and stock tickers, but real power hums in basements, behind lock panels and humming conduits. The kind of power that, if it stops for 5 seconds, turns those same offices into panic zones. I've seen it. I've lived under it. And I've kept it alive through storms, floods, and CEOs who thought light bulbs changed themselves. I don't usually write things like this, but something about what happened that day won't let me sleep right. Maybe it's because for once, when everything went dark, people finally saw me. The building's called Westmark Tower, 32 floors, mostly financial offices. I started there in 1993, when the carpet still smelled new and the wiring panels still had manufacturer stickers. I was 26, newly divorced, and grateful for any job that didn't require a suit. My first night, the chief engineer showed me the guts of the place: the backup generator, the chilled water loop, the elevator control relays, beautiful, loud, stubborn machines that obeyed no one but patience and routine. He told me, "Kid, this building's like a body. You keep its blood moving, it'll keep you fed." He retired. I stayed. Years stacked up like dust in the ducts. I stopped counting how many holidays I spent down there. Once, on Christmas Eve, the main elevator froze between the lobby and the parking deck. A family visiting an insurance rep got stuck for 2 hours. While everyone else panicked, I rigged a manual release, leveled the car, and got them out. The dad shook my hand, thanked me like I'd saved his life. Next week, HR sent a note saying overtime wasn't authorized. Still, I loved the quiet. At night, I'd walk the mechanical floors, listening to the rhythm of compressors and fans. It was music, the heartbeat of reliability. Then last year, she arrived, the new chief operating officer, fresh from some tech firm where everything was optimized and lean. Name was Meredith Hale. Tailored suits, soft voice that always carried a hidden edge. She came down to the basement once, and looked around like she'd stepped into a cave. "Do you actually need all these manuals?" she asked, pointing at my shelves of binders. I said, "They're the building's history. Every repair logged." She smiled like that was quaint. "We're going digital," she said. "Scan what matters, discard the rest." She also hired a consultant, a kid barely 30, to audit facilities efficiency. He carried a tablet everywhere and told me preventive maintenance was low priority compared to operational uptime. I told him uptime depends on maintenance. He blinked, nodded like a therapist, and marked something on his tablet. By spring, my supply budget was cut by 30%. The backup generator's transfer switch, an old but solid Eaton unit, was overdue for service. I sent 3 requests, each stamped defer to Q4. The switch had started lagging, taking 2 to 3 seconds longer to transfer during self-test. That's a lifetime in an outage. I logged it. Twice, no response. The night before it happened, I stayed late, testing circuits while a thunderstorm rattled the windows. My handheld meters showed low voltage on phase B. Nothing catastrophic, just the kind of symptom you don't ignore. I left a note in the system and another on paper in my old leather notebook, the one I've carried since day one. Next morning, the building buzzed like a hive. Quarterly investor call day. They'd set up a fancy media room on the 15th floor, catered breakfast, sleek lights, cameras. Meredith walked through the lobby, all smiles, flanked by interns and PR staff. I passed her in the hall. She didn't see me. Nobody ever does until they need something. I checked the generator one last time. The storm had passed, but the clouds were still heavy, low enough to bruise the sky. The voltage sagged again, just a whisper. My gut tightened. I noted the reading, turned off the flashlight, and stood there for a moment, in the hum of the diesel tank heater. 30 years, and I'd never once let that building fail. I'd kept it breathing through blackouts, through budget cuts, through bosses who thought safety codes were suggestions. But that morning, staring at that flickering gauge, I knew something was coming. Upstairs, laughter. Down here, a faint ozone smell. I reached for the radio, hesitated. Maybe I'd finally grown tired of warning people who don't listen. So instead, I closed my notebook, slipped it into my breast pocket, and whispered to the generator like an old friend, "Hold steady, old girl. They're not ready for what happens if you don't." The clock on the wall ticked toward 9:17 a.m., the exact minute everything would go black. At 9:17 a.m., every light in Westmark Tower died at once. No flicker, no warning, just a single snap, like God had flipped a switch. The hum of the air handlers vanished. The screens went blank. For half a second there was silence so heavy it felt physical. Then came the sound I'll never forget, the synchronized gasp of 1,000 people, realizing the world had gone dark. I was on the service level, halfway through my first cup of burnt coffee, when the emergency alarm buzzed once and cut off. That was worse than the blackout. The alarm never cuts off, unless the panel's lost its own power. "Jesus Christ," I muttered and ran. Down the corridor, my flashlight beam jittered across metal ducts and white pipes. The smell hit next, ozone and melting insulation, faint but sharp enough to sting the back of my throat. My boots echoed on the concrete as I reached the main breaker room. The status panel glowed red in little squares. Automatic transfer fail. That damn switch. The one I'd warned about 3 times. I keyed the radio. "Control to security. Confirm building-wide outage. Elevators stopped." Static. Then a panicked voice. "Elevators are stuck. 3 cars between floors. People trapped." I took a breath, exhaled slow. "Copy. Keep them calm. Don't touch anything. I'm on it." I grabbed the emergency toolkit and sprinted for the stairwell. My knees aren't what they used to be, but adrenaline makes you younger for a while. By the 4th floor, I could already hear muffled banging and crying from inside one of the elevator shafts. I pried open the maintenance panel, flipped the manual brake release, and spun the leveling wheel by hand, until the door aligned. The faces that looked out, terrified interns, one woman in heels clutching her phone like a weapon, blurred together. "Step out carefully," I said, "one at a time. Watch the gap." They nodded like children. When the last one stepped out, she whispered, "Thank you." First, "Thank you," I'd heard in months. But no time for that. 2 more cars to go. 15 minutes later, all 3 elevators were empty. Sweat soaked through my shirt. The flashlight batteries were dying. I climbed again, this time to 15, the media room. That's where the chaos was loudest. The door was open. Inside, phones glowed dimly in hands. People shouting over one another. The COO, Meredith, stood by the conference table like a general in retreat. "Why isn't backup power on yet?" she yelled. I stepped in, chest heaving. "Transfer switch failed. I'm bringing the generator online manually, but it's a process." She turned on me. "A process? We have clients watching live streams. Our servers are down," I said, "because your consultant deferred the maintenance." For a heartbeat, her eyes flashed pure panic before she masked it with anger. "Just fix it." "Already am." I turned before she could say more and headed to the mechanical core. The stairwell felt tighter now, air heavier, as if the building itself were holding its breath. At level B2, the generator room was half lit by the red emergency strobes. I went straight to the manual transfer lever. The old steel handle was stiff, hot to the touch. Outside, thunder rolled again. Rain lashed the exhaust louvers. I checked the pressure gauge, the coolant level, the RPM monitor, each one stubbornly stable. Good. The machine still had life. "Come on, sweetheart," I muttered and pulled the lever. It resisted, then clanked hard into place. The deep diesel cough filled the room, a sound that felt like salvation. The lights flickered, first red, then amber, then bright white. For a moment, everything worked. Then the fire alarm began to chatter. "Server room heat rising!" A voice crackled through the intercom. IT, panicking. "Cooling system's dead." The generator's power hadn't reached the HVAC's controller. That meant that automatic damper actuators were frozen. Without air, the server room would cook itself alive in under 10 minutes. I ran again, lungs on fire. On the 5th floor, I found 2 box fans in janitorial storage, ripped the cords from their plugs, and spliced them into a live outlet using wire nuts from my pocket. Then I kicked open the server room sash window, a rare thing in a sealed tower, and jammed the fans there, blowing night air across the racks. It wasn't elegant, but it bought us minutes. Behind me, the COO stormed in with a flashlight. "This is insane. We could lose millions in data." "Already almost did," I said. "You'll thank me later." She didn't answer, probably because she didn't know how. I checked my watch. 40 minutes into the blackout. Power stable on emergency circuits. But the main transfer still refused to engage. One wrong move and the generator could overload. I wasn't risking lives for her quarterly report. So I stayed by the panel, recording every voltage change in my notebook, marking timestamps for the eventual report. When the first responders arrived, fire marshal, city electrical inspector, I was still there, sweating calm, hands steady on the controls. By 10:12, grid power returned. The tower hummed back to life. Laughter upstairs, cheers in hallways. People clapped for IT, for management. Someone shouted, "We're back online." No one looked my way. That was fine. I wasn't done yet. When I powered down the generator and logged the final readings, I slipped the pen into my pocket, pulled the radio close to my mouth, and said quietly, "Control, log this. Incident start, Zone 917, restore 1012. Cause, deferred maintenance on ATS. Warnings ignored." Silence. Then, almost reluctant, security replied, "Logged." I smiled to myself, because I knew that log was recorded. And someday soon, that line would matter more than anything Meredith Hale said on her call. By the time the last elevator reopened and the hum of the air conditioning returned, you'd think a miracle had just occurred. Laughter echoed down the halls. Coffee machines rebooted, screens flickered back to life, and the entire 15th floor applauded like the apocalypse had been canceled. They thanked the quick work of the IT department and the decisive leadership of management. My name didn't come up once. I was still down on B2, kneeling beside the generator, tracing my finger over the heat, scoring on the transfer relay. Proof that it had arced. Proof that my warnings hadn't been just ink on paper. The storm outside had passed, leaving the world heavy and damp. Inside, the building buzzed with a new kind of storm, the one that follows 4. Everyone wanted someone to blame, and when people with titles panic, they always look down first. At 3:40 p.m., just as I was finishing my incident report, my phone buzzed. HR. "Can you come to Conference B?" I knew that tone. Upstairs, the glass walls of the conference room reflected a dozen nervous faces. Meredith sat at the head of the table, her immaculate hair untouched by the morning's chaos. Beside her, the efficiency consultant scrolled through a tablet, his thumb hovering like a judge's gavel. "Please, have a seat," she said. I didn't. She sighed. "We've received some concerns about how you handled today's incident." I stared at her. "Concerns?" "You delayed restoration of power by—" She glanced at the consultant. "At least 10 minutes. You also operated the transfer switch manually without written authorization." I almost laughed. "Authorization? The system failed. People were trapped. I did my job." Her voice stayed calm, rehearsed. "There are protocols, Mr. Raines. You bypassed several of them. We're evaluating whether that constitutes a breach of procedure." I let the silence stretch. They expected me to apologize, maybe to beg. But 30 years of invisible service teaches you patience and how to weaponize it. Finally, I said, "You want to talk procedure? Let's." I set my leather notebook on the table and opened it to a page marked with a red tab. 3 neatly written entries. Feb 12. Transfer switch lag reported. Mar 4. Service deferred by management directive. APR 2. Voltage irregularities observed. Memo filed. Below each line were initials, hers. Meredith's expression barely shifted, but her eyes tightened. The consultant stopped scrolling. I kept going. I also have 3 digital work requests, time-stamped and closed without action. The last one, dated 8 days ago, includes a voice memo. I pulled out my phone, tapped to play. Her voice filled the room, clear and confident. Defer the maintenance until Q4. It's not a priority. Silence. The kind that weighs more than noise ever could. I followed every safety regulation to the letter, I said. When power failed, I performed the manual transfer to protect lives and assets. You can verify that with the fire department and the city inspector who arrived on site at 10:02. All logged, all recorded. Meredith folded her hands. No one is disputing your technical ability, Mr. Raines. We're just reviewing internal communication. Sure, I said softly. Just make sure the review includes this. I slid a printed form across the table. The incident report I'd finished barely an hour earlier. Signed, dated, witnessed by security. On the last line, under cause of failure, I'd written, deferred maintenance due to management decision. The consultant cleared his throat. Let's, take a short recess. But I wasn't finished. You'll also want to loop in the insurance carrier, I said. NFPA 110 compliance was violated when preventive maintenance was postponed beyond 12 months. The city's electrical code section 700.5 covers that. I can provide the clause numbers. That's when Meredith lost her composure. Just a flicker, the jaw tightening, eyes flashing like a short circuit. Are you threatening me? No, I said. I'm reporting an incident. I closed my notebook, slid it under my arm, and walked out before anyone could stop me. Outside the conference room, the corridor hummed with fluorescent light. People passed, phones in hand, smiles returning. None of them knew that for a full hour that morning, their lives had been in my hands. They didn't need to, but Meredith Hale did. Back in the maintenance office, I made 2 calls. The first to the city electrical inspector, a man named Garcia, who'd known me since his apprentice days. I told him what happened, read him the log entries, and offered full access to the generator room. He didn't even hesitate. We'll be there in the morning. The second call was to Union Local 217. I wasn't a troublemaker, but I paid dues like everyone else. When I explained, the rep's voice sharpened. Don't sign anything, don't answer emails, and document everything. We'll handle the rest. That night, I stayed in the building long after everyone left. Not to fix anything. It was already fixed. But because I wanted to see the place quiet again. The hum had returned, steady, obedient, like a dog that only ever wanted care. I walked the floors, checked the gauges, listened to the whisper of balanced current through copper veins. The building didn't blame me. Machines don't lie. People do. By midnight, I sat in the basement office, the glow of the emergency panel painting my hands red. I flipped open the notebook and wrote one last line under the day's entry. They'll learn the hard way who keeps them safe. I closed it gently, turned off the light, and left the tower, breathing steady in the dark. Tomorrow the inspectors would come, and for the first time in 30 years, I wouldn't be the one explaining myself. The next morning, Westmark Tower woke to a kind of stillness that had nothing to do with weather. The clouds were gone, but the air carried weight, like the building itself was holding its breath, waiting to see who would speak first. I was already there before sunrise, standing by the loading dock with a thermos of bitter coffee and my notebook under my arm. At exactly 8 a.m., a white van with the city seal rolled in. Out stepped Inspector Garcia, clipboard in hand, neon vest reflecting the weak morning light. He gave me a look that said he already knew more than anyone upstairs would want him to. "Morning, Frank," he said. "Morning," I replied. "You ready?" Been ready for 30 years. We walked through the halls like ghosts, past employees whispering in corners, past the polished marble lobby that still smelled faintly of burnt wiring. I led him straight to the generator room. When he saw the transfer switch, he whistled low. Old Eaton unit still running? Barely. I logged 3 service requests. They deferred them all. He crouched, examined the relay housing, ran a finger across the scorched edge where the contacts had welded briefly. You got photos? Page 74. He flips out through my notebook, nodding as he saw the timestamps, the signatures. You really do write everything down, huh? Machines don't lie, I said. By mid-morning, there were 4 inspectors on site. OSHA joined in. The fire marshal returned to collect his follow-up report. I didn't say a word more than necessary. The evidence spoke for itself. Deferred maintenance orders signed by the COO. No annual load bank test since last year. No documented drill for emergency transfer procedure. Each infraction meant a fine. Each fine meant liability. By noon, the board of directors had been notified. By 3, Meredith Hale was summoned upstairs for a closed executive review. The efficiency consultant vanished sometime after lunch. Rumor was he took a personal day. I stayed where I belonged, B2, by the machines. When the call finally came through my radio, Mr. Raines, the board requests your presence, I almost laughed. 30 years of invisibility, and now they wanted me upstairs. The boardroom smelled of coffee and quiet panic. Men in suits, faces pale, papers spread like confessions. The chairman gestured to a seat. Mr. Raines, first, thank you for your quick action yesterday. I nodded. Just doing my job. He cleared his throat. Inspector Garcia has completed his preliminary report. It cites multiple violations, none attributable to you. In fact, he looked at his notes, your documentation appears to have prevented further damage and potentially loss of life. Meredith sat across from me, expression fixed somewhere between anger and disbelief. Her hands were clasped so tight. Her knuckles were white. The chairman continued. Ms. Hale has agreed to step down, effective immediately. We will be reviewing all deferred maintenance policies. In the meantime, we'd like to discuss retaining you as an independent consultant during the transition. Consultant, I repeated. The word tasted strange. Yes, you know this building better than anyone alive. We'd like you to oversee the modernization project. Your plan from last year, what was it called? Operation Redline. Right. We'll fund it fully. Name your rate. I paused, looked around the room. Faces that had never once seen me before now, pretending they always had. I opened my notebook, turned to a blank page and wrote a number. I slid it across the table. The chairman glanced at it, blinked, then nodded. Approved. When I stood to leave, Meredith finally spoke. You set me up, she said quietly, venom under her breath. I stopped at the door, turned halfway. No, I said. You set yourself up. I just took notes. That was the last time we spoke. 3 months later, Westmark Tower gleamed brighter than ever. The old generator was replaced with a modern twin unit, fully automated, tested quarterly. Every cable, every breaker, labeled and logged under my new system. The brass plaque by the generator room read, in compliance with NFPA 110, maintenance verified by Raines Consulting. The first official test day drew a small crowd, engineers, staff, a few executives pretending they understood voltage. I ran the procedure myself. At 10 power a.m. sharp, I flipped the control to test mode. The lights dipped. The generator roared alive, smooth and confident. The transfer was seamless. 3 seconds flat, no flicker, no panic. Applause broke out. Someone clapped me on the shoulder. Hell of a job, Frank. Another said, Man, you're a legend down here. I just nodded. Legends don't keep score. They keep systems running. When the test ended, I wrote the readings in my notebook. Page 101. All systems stable. Prepared beats lucky. That's what I wrote on the new placard above the control panel, too. The words that had carried me through every storm, every failure, every unthanked night. As the last of the crowd filed out, I lingered a moment longer in the hum of the generator room. The machines purred, steady and obedient. The same sound I'd loved since my first night in this building. For 30 years I'd been invisible, until the day the lights went out. Funny thing is, I never wanted recognition. I just wanted them to listen. Now, every time those lights flicker, every time someone walks past that brass plaque, they remember the man who kept them safe. And me, I just tighten one last bolt, close the panel door, and whisper to the machine, "Good girl, let's keep them guessing."